It's time to fire this thing up.
Welcome aboard ShipShape TV Essentials. This is your port of call for the most impactful upgrades, expert advice, and hands-on solutions from seasons past. This episode is proudly brought to you by thru-hull, because anything worth doing is worth doing bright. From cleaning to protecting and perfecting, thru-hull has everything you need to keep your boat shining. Don't just go boating, go showboating. Now, let's hoist anchor and set a course for another exciting episode of ShipShape TV Essentials.
Countersink some holes, screw it down, and I'm again going to let this last out. Dry fit this thing into the boat. Well, that isn't working out too great. Kind of cutting into the gel coat. Hi, I'm John Greviskis. Good to have you working around the boat with us again. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to remove some of these old vinyl letters off the hull of this boat. And because of the age of these things and how weathered they are, they're not really coming off. With this razor blade, I'm having to pick off little pieces of it, and the result is I'm kind of cutting into the gel coat, and that's not a good thing. But we'll get it. Well, I got to tell you, we've got a great show lined up for you today here at ShipShape TV, because we're not only going to show you how to remove these old vinyl letters and graphics off the boat, but we're also going to show you how to greatly diminish the ghosting problem that's associated with these things. And we're going to take a look at some tools that are available when removing paint off of the hull. Now, if that wasn't enough, we're also going to be installing a bilge pump to our 16-foot aluminum chambered boat, and if there's time, we're even going to be getting into a little bit of fiberglass repair. So here's the deal. Like always, it's a trade-off. We need to get you to spend the next 30 minutes with us. And in exchange, right after I bring out the heavy-duty artillery for this thing, we're going to be letting you in on a few more ways to make your boat shipshape.
This is a real working 28-acre boatyard located in Stuart, Florida, on the shores of the Okeechobee Waterway. It's home base for ShipShape TV. This deep stretch of water connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of Mexico. And now, once again, here's the host of ShipShape TV, John Greviskis.
Thanks, Buck. This is a 1988 17-foot Stingray that we've been in the process of working on. And I'm really not too crazy about the gel coat on this boat. It's very, very oxidized. And I'm definitely not crazy about the vinyl letters or the graphics that are on this boat. Time is kind of taking its toll on some of this stuff, and it's really chipping up and peeling off, and it's just not looking that great. I started off by using a razor blade. A problem with a razor blade is these two edges right here have a tendency to dig into the gel coat, or it'll dig into a painted surface. Now, you can always hone this on a little bit of glass, and that's going to reduce the amount of damage. But as you can see here, when I was trying to pick this R off of the boat, I've kind of cut into that, and that's not a good thing. Now, we could try a heat gun like this. And what a heat gun will do is it applies heat to the glue that's holding this onto the boat, and it softens the glue, and that helps you bring these graphics off of the boat. But the problem with this is if you hold it in one spot for too long, you could damage your paint, or you could damage your gel coat. It could actually blister on you, and then you're into even more work. That's not good. Or you could try this approach right here. This is a special type of flapper wheel that is designed for removing adhesive. And with this type of wheel, it's very important that you use the proper tool. It has to be at the correct RPM. Now, this particular pad is a 7-inch version, and it needs to spin at 2,000 RPM. Now, you could put this on a drill that would have that capability, a drill motor, or you could put it on a buffing wheel like I've done here. Now, our particular buffing wheel will spin between 900 RPM and 2,000 RPM. This thing's adjustable. You have a little dial here that's going to let you do that. Now, I've never tried this before. I'm curious to see how this works, but they're telling me that this will remove the vinyl graphics. It will also remove the adhesive without damaging the gel coat. I'm going to put some safety glasses on and give this thing a spin. actually doing an excellent job. Now this thing has been designed not to hurt the gel coat that's underneath the boat or the paint. And as you can see, it's removing a little bit of oxidation, but it's not damaging it. Pretty impressed. Now, do you see that you can still read what the graphics were saying? There's no adhesive here and there's no vinyl left over, but you can clearly see that you can still read Super Sport or any of the other graphics that were on this boat. That's called ghosting. That's the problem that I was talking about earlier at the top of the show. Now, the reason they call it ghosting is this problem is usually going to haunt you for as long as you own the boat, unless you know how to take care of it. Now, what we're going to use are a couple of different buffing, rubbing compounds on the boat. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to reduce the amount of oxidation. Now, the reason that this has happened here is the sun, the UV rays, have attacked the surface of this gel coat. But where the vinyl letters are, is it's totally sealed out the environment. This is original gel coat. This is the original color of this boat. It's a charcoal gray. And from the oxidation, from the sun, those UV rays, it's turned it to a light gray. Now we need to rub this out with a heavy-duty rubbing compound, and we're going to get this thing looking really nice again. Now, after a while, your rubbing compound is going to build up on your buffing pad. And what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to spur it. You don't want to use wood. It'll splinter. You also want to stay away from metal because that will color your wheel. You want to use some type of plastic. This is some starboard. This is just a scrap that we cut out. And when you're spurring, what you want to do is you kind of want to work your wheel to get that old rubbing compound off. Just like this, and then you can apply some new compound on and keep going at it. Now this is just the first application of a heavy-duty rubbing compound to this gel-coated surface, and as you can see, we've removed quite a bit of the oxidation. But there still is this outline where the Super Sport was originally. Now, we will wheel this a couple of more times, and hopefully that's going to blend these areas in a little bit. Now, if we didn't like the ghosting problem here, we could do a couple of things. We could maybe buy some larger graphics and cover the thing up. You know, a lot of people buy a boat and it's previously named, and you might not like that name and you want to change it. Well, you could buy some larger graphics and cover the thing up. Or what you could do is you could go to the expense of actually repainting the boat or re-gel coating it. But again, that's a pretty hefty proposition. Now we have some graphics that I'm not too keen on with our 1976 21-foot Seabird. We're going to be getting those off of the boat as well, but we're not going to be going this route. We're going to be sanding them off with some tools. And what I've done to find out what some of our different options are is I've invited a good friend of mine to join us. His name's Pete Blackshaw, and he's with Grainger Industrial Supply. Let's go meet him. Hey, Pete.
Hi, John.
How you been?
Good to see you.
Pardon my mess, I've been working. Now, we've got some paint that's on the hull of this boat, and what we need to do is I want to remove it, and I also want to remove these graphics. These aren't vinyl, these have been airbrushed onto the hull, but I would like to remove them, and I'd kind of like to take a look at what some of my options would be tool-wise to do the task.
Well, it looks like you got your work cut out for you, but I brought a nice assortment of tools for you to choose from.
Okay.
First off, and this I brought with me, but I don't strongly recommend this as a choice for you to use. This is an attachment that you can buy for any 3/8" drill that has a sanding disc attached to it that you can use to remove material.
Okay, now why do you not recommend that?
Well, you have very little control due to the shape of a drill motor, there's a tendency to angle this rather than leave it flat to the surface, and there's a strong possibility you're going to gouge the surface of the gel coat.
But oftentimes that's all people have.
Well, if that's the route that you have to take, I would strongly recommend that you buy an attachment with a nice soft rubber backing pad to help absorb some of that angle.
Also, it's going to probably help you contour on the boat a little better. There's a lot of curves and radiuses on boats.
That's correct. Still not the ideal choice, but if that's all you have to work with, at least make sure you've got a good soft foam rubber backing pad.
Okay, well, what do you recommend?
Well, the tool of choice probably in this application is a regular palm sander, and you basically have two types, a vibrating and a random orbit.
Show us the difference.
Well, a vibrating sander is one that has some vibrating action, but not as strong as a random orbit sander that's going to move in more directions simultaneously and be able to take off more material.
Okay, so does a pad sander, does that pretty much just go up and down, rubbing back and forth in one direction?
Pretty much on the vibrating sander, but the random orbit will go in several different directions at the same time.
Okay, so it's orbiting and it's kind of going back and forth, so it's kind of covering more
action,
area.
yes.
Okay, good deal.
One choice that you want to decide on is mechanically, how is the paper attached to the sander, to the palm sander, and that's something else we want to take a quick look at. First off is mechanically attached. When these sanders first came out, this was the method to attach the paper. It came in large sheets, you cut it to size, and then it had little clips along the edges here to attach the paper.
Okay. Now they've progressed a little bit since then.
Yeah, because there are a couple of disadvantages with that. First off, the paper would wrap around the corner of the rubber, and that would tend to wear the rubber pad out. Also, the paper would tend to crack, so the next move up was to go to pressure-sensitive adhesive onto the rubber backing pad.
Okay. Now, Pete, a lot of people probably still have these types of palm sanders at home. Rather than buying a new tool, can you buy a replacement pad if it does wear out?
Yes, you can. Most of the major manufacturers still have replacement parts available.
Okay, but this type of random orbital sander has an adhesive type of abrasive that sticks to it. What's the downside of that?
But over time, the adhesive will transfer to the rubber backing pad. You'll tend to collect a lot of dust on there, and then you'll end up with a real lumpy surface, so that when you go to sand, you're not sanding with a nice flat rubber pad.
So you get buildup with the adhesive and dust and all of that.
That's correct.
How do we get the buildup off of the pad without hurting it?
Any mild adhesive remover, like a denatured alcohol, will help remove that buildup.
Okay, good deal. And what's the next step?
Well, the next step up, and this is probably my favorite, and that is the new hook and loop system to attach the pad, to attach the sanding disc to the pad. It's a straight standard hook and loop type system. There's no adhesive, there's no buildup, and you're always going to maintain a nice flat surface. Plus, it's very easy and quick to change the sanding discs.
Who are some of the big players in palm sanders?
Well, Porter Cable, DeWalt, Milwaukee, just to name a few.
Okay. Is there a big difference between a lot of the retail stores, a lot of big chains, and a lot of the home improvement centers, Pete? They private label some tools. Is there a difference between that particular tool and like a name brand tool?
Well, what I brought you today are more commercial quality tools. Homeowner quality tools are usually constructed for intermittent use. They're not built for heavy duty use. They still work adequately for most jobs, but on a job this size, you might want to consider something more of a commercial quality.
Are those private labeled names built by the same companies that make these?
Typically, yes, John. They're built by one of the major manufacturers.
Okay. I was noticing on this palm sander that it has a collection bag on it. When you put a collection bag onto a palm sander, do you lose power? Or is it better to use this type of a palm sander here?
Well, I prefer the collection bag. You will lose a little bit of power, but as you notice, a series of holes that are built into here, the action of the motor helps draw the dust through the internal housing here of the sander and then collect that into the bag.
And oftentimes around a boat, especially when you're talking about bottom paint or something like that, you want to collect that debris. You don't want to be breathing it, and you really don't want it going into the environment.
Yes. In addition, you'll also get more life out of the sanding disc if you can keep that the dust and the powder off of the sanding surface.
Okay, well, come on over to the boat and show me how to use that, okay?
Okay, John, well, first thing, even though we've got a dust collection system on here, we want to make sure we use our safety gear.
Okay. We've got dust masks, and we have a couple of pairs of safety glasses here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and plug you in, if that's all right. Give me some tips on how to use this tool a little bit better, okay, Pete?
Well, first and foremost, John, you want to make sure that your sanding surface remains flat on the hull of the boat. There's a temptation to rush the job and tilt or angle the sander to feel like you're taking off more material and getting the job done faster. But in reality, all you're going to be doing is gouging the surface. So let the tool do the work and have some patience, and just let the dust collection system do its job and the paper do its job.
So you're just keeping it flat.
You're keeping it flat. You also want to make sure that you don't stay in one spot too long. Let the paper do the work. Don't apply too much pressure. And you see that's coming off real nicely.
All right, Pete. So a palm sander is an option. What else is there available?
Well, come on over to the table, John. I'll show you what else I've got.
Okay.
From here, you need to move up to what most of the professionals use, and that is to invest in an air compressor and move towards air tools.
Okay. What's the difference between electric tools and air tools?
Well, air tools are more durable. They're going to hold up under continual use, and although they're a more significant investment, you're going to get longer life out of the tools, and the quality of how the tool works is a little bit better.
Well, what kind of tools are there for sanding?
Well, here is this would be the version of the palm sander in air. This is a DA, which stands for dual action. And what's happening is you're getting two actions at the same time. The disc is spinning as well as moving in an oval pattern as well.
Okay, now who are the big players in DAs?
Ingersoll Rand, Chicago Pneumatic, Dayton brand as well.
Okay, so again, this would be for more flat areas on the boat, not really getting into the curved surfaces, right?
That's correct.
Okay, what do you use for a curved surface?
For curved surfaces, you really need to move to an air file. And come on over to the boat and I'll show you what I mean.
Okay.
With an air file, the way this lays into the boat and moving in a gradual X pattern through the curve of the boat, the pad is going to be in contact with the boat surface at all times.
Okay, so this is going to help you sand through the curve.
That's
versus
correct.
Those palm sanders and those DAs.
That's
where
correct.
those are sanding primarily flat areas. Well, I know you brought the ultimate tool for the job. Come on and show me this, okay?
Okay, John, this is a dual action sander made by the Fein Corporation. But what's really neat about this tool is the dust collection system that's built into it.
Okay.
Similar as some of the other tools in the surface and the way that the hook and loop works. So you've got your great pad attachment here, large heavy duty motor. But what's really neat about this tool is the dust collection. When you turn this tool on, it activates the vacuum cleaner, which is a dust collection system that picks up.
Let me try it. Okay, so if I turn this thing on, the vacuum comes on?
That's correct.
Okay.
You've got a filter system in here trapping all the dust particles that are coming off of the boat.
All right, let's see the filter system here. So we've actually got a filter.
You've got a filter media. It's trapping all the dust as it comes right off the boat.
Now, talk to me about a system like this. This has got to run some money.
Well, this one's fairly expensive. Probably not a choice for the part-time or occasional user. Runs a little under $2,000, but it is the ultimate, and I know you like toys.
Well, I'm going to be playing with it, Pete. Thank you so much for all the advice. I'm going to get busy and start sanding. See ya. We're starting to put a dent into this thing, but it's going to take me several more hours to finish this up. But what I'd like to get into next is I'd like to real quick show you how to put a bilge pump in a boat. Come on over. This is our model year 2000 1650 aluminum chambered boat. We're just about ready to get this vessel offshore and hit some big water. Now, even though it's 16 foot in length, it's been designed to handle some pretty big waves. And we are having a little bit of a problem though. We tie this boat up a lot here at the boatyard. We're right on the Okeechobee Waterway, which connects the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic Ocean. We get a lot of boat traffic. Now, we are in a no-wake zone. However, a lot of boat owners are not honoring that no-wake zone, and the wake that's coming off of their vessels sometimes actually crests over the stern of the boat, and it fills into the cockpit. Now, it's not a problem. This boat is not going to sink or anything. It's been designed with 9 separate airtight aluminum flotation chambers that go all the way around the thing, and it has a self-bailing cockpit. And what I mean here is when you engage the throttles into forward, and as the boat is coming up on plane, the water pushes back to the stern and it comes out right here. There are some flaps right here. These are actually scupper flaps. Now, the problem with this is down here in Florida, it gets cold, especially in the wintertime, just like anywhere else in the country. And you don't want to be trudging through water in order to get back to these scupper flaps. Now, they need to be attached when you're at dock. And then again, when you're running, you want to make sure that they're in the down position. But you need to go through that water, and it's just kind of an annoyance. Now, water in the transom or water in the actual boat will also occur from rain. Even if it's on a trailer, and we want to somehow get that water out of there in order to have the cockpit bone dry when we get into the boat, and that's what a bilge pump is for. Now, there are different companies that make bilge pumps. There's Atwood, there's Rule, Groco, as well as Jabsco, and a bunch more. And bilge pumps are used primarily in conjunction with something called a float switch. This is a float switch right here. What a float switch does is as water enters the boat, this switch will actually float with the level of the water. And when it gets to a certain level, it's actually going to trip the pump, and that's what's going to pump the water outside the boat. Now, that's usually through some sort of a thru-hull fitting, through a hose and through a thru-hull fitting. Now, there are different types of float switches. There are some that are relatively inexpensive, like this. There are some others that are much more technically advanced. This one right here will actually determine if there's any gasoline or any oil present in the bilge. It will not allow the bilge pump to turn on if there is oil or gasoline present. And what that does is it really saves our environment. It doesn't let any of those pollutants out into our waterways. Now, there's also some different companies that make something called high water alarms. And what happens here is when water is entering the boat and it gets to a certain level, it's going to put out an audio sound or a very piercing noise that says, hey, you better check the water in the boat. Now, how bilge pumps are measured is by gallons per hour. You're going to have a number on a bilge pump. This one right here is 1,800. This is letting us know that this pump will pump 1,800 gallons of water an hour. This one right here pumps 1,000 gallons an hour. We have an Atwood version that pumps 500 an hour, and we're going to be using a similar type of pump. We're going to be using this one right here. This is a 500 gallon per hour pump. But what's kind of unique about this unit is it's very small and compact. We have a relatively small and compact boat, and the float switch is built right into this unit, so we don't have to attach a float switch and a bilge pump together. Traditionally, that's how you do it. We're just going to be installing this one piece of hardware right here. Now, where we're going to mount our bilge pump is we want to find a location in the lowest spot of the boat, and that's going to be as far back aft to the transom. Here's the transom right here. Now, we have a couple of things that we need to deal with. We have these mounting plates for batteries, and we also have our fuel tanks. And what I'm thinking is maybe right behind these fuel tanks would be the best location. Now, we're also going to have to put some type of a thru-hull fitting through the hull in order to let our water evacuate. This is a bronze type of thru-hull fitting here. And the problem with using a bronze type of thru-hull fitting on an aluminum boat is you have two dissimilar metals, and they would need to be isolated away from each other, either through nylon or some type of a plastic or some type of an anti-seize. Otherwise, if the two touch, you could get into a corrosion problem. Or we could go with a thru-hull fitting like this. This is actually called a Marlon thru-hull fitting, and it's plastic. And as long as it's above the water line, this is perfectly acceptable. Now, the first thing that we needed to do was, again, remove those fuel tanks. Then what we did is we marked out for where our bilge pump was going to set, and we drilled a couple of pilot holes. Now, the screws that we were using into our deck were self-tapping stainless steel screws, and again, that's a dissimilar metal from aluminum. So what we had to do is we had to first put some type of an anti-seize onto the threads of those screws, and then we had to use a good polyurethane sealant in order to make sure that we sealed the holes. Now, up at the dash, we wanted to put in a 3-way rocker switch. We cut open a hole using a drill, and then we used the saber saw. Next, we needed to deburr the edge. We used a file along with the deburr, and we ran our wiring. Next thing we needed to do is we had to put in our thru-hull fitting. We used a 1-inch hole saw in order to drill through the aluminum. Then we deburred that edge, and we put the thru-hull fitting in, again using a good amount of polyurethane non-adhesive sealant. And we went and we ran our bilge hose. Well, our bilge pump is all installed, and what I've been doing is I've been adding some water to the boat in order to test this thing out, and I think I got enough in here. Here's our switch up on the dash. Again, it's a 3-position switch, manual as well as off, and auto. Let me hit the manual. And as you can see, our bilge pump is evacuating water from this boat. It's really going to help out.